Hi everyone, welcome back to Desi Australia. Today we have a very special guest with us, someone whose music brings together so many different sounds, cultures, and influences throughout her life. I'm joined by Parvyn, a vocalist and a performer whose music moves between classical Indian rock, soul, rock, jazz, and contemporary sounds. Thank you so much for joining us today. And let's just start with a question. For people who are discovering you for the first time, how would you describe yourself and the music that you make?
The music that I make has changed a lot over the years. When I first started, I was singing Gurbani Kirtan with my dad. Then I had my band, the Bombay Royale, which did a lot of vintage Bollywood sounding stuff. Now my music is a mix of jazz and like you said, the rock and pop and things like that of the Western world, but then bringing in my tradition of the Indian classical world and kirtan. So it's um I guess it's the sort of thing where I am creating music that it would be hard for you to find another album that sounds like the music that I make. So it's very unique. It's something fresh. I think you would agree if
Yes,
you've heard it that it's really something that no one else is making quite like the way that I am, which I'm very proud of.
I completely agree because I was just listening to a few of your clips from the tours that you have done, and with like AI music coming in, as well as like the same remakes happening throughout like the film industry, it's so refreshing to hear a voice that's so different and untouched by, I think, the mass production. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really love live music. So
Mhm,
for me, that's where my music comes from. And I like being in the studio and everything too, but when it's actually the sort of thing where you're hearing something that's coming directly from someone in the space with you.
mhm,
And I know that there are ways that you can sort of have mass-produced sound in live performances as well, but they're not really the sort of concerts that I do. The sort of concerts that I do
mhm.
is more like taking it back to that connection from artist to performer in a very real, very kind of like being present way, like Maujuda, like that.
Mhm.
That's part of the premise of what I am about with my music and want to share with and remind people as well that that if that feeling of having something that is unique and special in coming to a live performance.
No, I completely agree with you on that one because when you're singing live or when you have people performing for you live, it's not like the one that's pre-recorded because you have so many retakes in that. But when you're singing, it's just you in the moment and your emotions. You actually began your career with your father, and how was it growing up around music? Because so many children are just surrounded by education and the stress of academics and stuff. But you actually had a more different childhood. You were surrounded with music and you started your journey that way. What was that like?
I feel so lucky that it was part of my life in that playing music, singing, dancing, all those sorts of things were highly encouraged because I think that that's what as humans we is so important in like yes you can have good studies, good job, good working, but the way that the world is changing
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about AI and all those sorts of things, that the thing that we're left with is our creativity, is our humanity, and using music in a devotional way. That's something that I learnt growing up singing with my dad, is that it is essentially for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like Nam Simran, right? Like it's meditation that you do as a musician. And that can be quite natural. And having the opportunity to have that as a child, I think is very important. And not in a like you have to like sit down and learn the sitar and do your riyaz kind of way, but in a very sort of hoping that it is something that you can enjoy as you get older. So it was good. It was tough at times because there would be moments that I wouldn't want to perform and I had to, and so I had to learn how to sit still on stage and have a big smile. And my mom, she would poke us in the back as we're sitting on stage and smile, smile. So like there were tough moments as well, but I'm really grateful for that training.
That's nice to hear. Because we're talking about it, do you remember the first time when you actually realized that this is what you want to do for a lifetime? Or were there any other career options which you were drawn to growing up?
Yeah, I do. I do. It's so in 1996, when I was 10, Michael Jackson came to Adelaide and he performed at the Adelaide Oval.
Uh-huh.
And so it's quite a long story, but I ended up performing on stage with him. And there was this
Cool.
moment where so I was the girl who came out holding a flower in the Earth song. Do you know that song?
Yeah, yeah,
With
yeah.
that one.
Mhm.
So I was the little girl in at Michael's show here in Adelaide.
Mhm.
And so I remember so vividly being on stage with him, and I came out and there was this army guy that crashed through the big screens at the back, and then I gave the army guy the flower, and then I stepped back and Michael gave me a hug, and then when the timing was right I came forward and you know comforted the soldier that was with the gun, and then and moved back. So it was all very theatrical, but it was I remember that moment and that feeling of Michael with his hands around me on stage to I don't know how many thousands of people were there that day, but it was like a touch of divine. It was just so beautiful
Mhm.
being in that creative space with Michael Jackson. And I was hooked. I absolutely was. So
That's
by the time,
crazy.
so that was when
I
I was
wasn't
10. So
expecting
since
this
then,
answer.
what's that? Sorry?
I wasn't expecting this fun story. I would never
Yeah.
imagine that to come out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's that. So that, I mean, I also remember things like watching Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan perform when he was at WOMAD and we got to meet him and stuff. So it was like meeting those great creative people
Hmm.
that just really, it made me realize that I wanted to be around that for the rest of my life. And I would do whatever I needed to. But I've also kind of I've not controlled it. Like I've taken the opportunities of these have come,
Hmm.
and this is where it's led me. So yeah.
That's really nice thing to know. And that's such a fun trivia fact that you got to perform with Michael Jackson. Um, was there ever a turning point in your life where you felt that you had the need to choose between your Indian classical music influences or growing up the more Western genres that you were drawn to?
I think when I was in my early 20s, my late teens,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of started making music that was more Western. Um it kind of was more kind of pop style, country even, a little bit of that. And I am glad that I didn't release any of that music. I sort of had a lot of demos.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the Bombay Royale started, and that started when I was like 23, 24. So it was early on enough that I was then able to just realize that the Indian style of music was popular and it was fun. And here I was with a bunch of these white guys playing Indian style music. And so I felt like it was cool, and it gave me the confidence to then realize that I can make any music, and I just needed to work at it and find my audiences eventually.
Mm-hmm. I'll accept that. Like I was listening to your music since the videos were shared with me, and it's so different and it's so refreshing. And I feel so guilty for being drawn to like more mainstream music when there are like so many hidden gems around. Because recently I've been trying to shift my attention towards more indie music as well, because there's literally no originality in like no hate, but it's like so many just redrawn and remakes, and it just makes you lose the love for the music that you grew up with. Here,
Mm.
um, what does Indian classical music give you as an artist that you don't necessarily find in the other genres that you have practiced?
Uh, Indian classical music and also Gurbani
Hmm.
Kirtan. I think both are the same in what they
Hmm.
give me. Is that music is a devotion.
Hmm.
Music is not necessarily about performing and sharing with people, but it's about reaching your own atma, your own spirit,
Hmm.
right? And that sense of devotion that Indian classical music has, because you really have to internalize and you have to focus so deeply to actually be able to do classical style music, right? Like it's quite difficult to do. And so that riyaz that is required to get to a level of uh, like that you can perform it is like this meditation that just feels like the process of doing that riyaz is where the importance is. It's not it's not the performance part of it. And so in that way, no matter how my career goes, successful, whatever, how many big my shows are, that they can't you can't take away that part of my artistry from me. And so that's what Indian classical and Gurbani gives me in comparison to maybe more Western styles of thinking about it.
Now, tell us more about Maujuda. I know this album had a huge mark on your career for you. What does this album represent for you personally? And were there any instances in life where you drew inspiration to have this album made?
This album I made in Canada. And so that already was quite an amazing thing to be able to travel and make this music with incredible musicians and producers over there. It was inspired by the story of migration of my ancestors, right? So my grandparents left India in the 40s, both sides, my dada dadi, my nana nani, both they all left India and they went to Malaysia separately. But so my parents were both born in Malaysia.
Oh, wow.
And then my parents went to England to do their studies, and from England they came to Australia in the late 70s. So a lot of the songs in Maujuda are about migration, about the courage that it takes to take these journeys. I think of my grandmother on my dad's side. I have a song called Lay Awake on the album, where it's the story of on the train from Punjab to then catch the boat that took them to Malaysia. And then they took a train through the heart of Malaysia and were dropped off in the middle of the night on a platform in this Malaysian jungle with all of the mosquitoes and everything. And I just think about like what courage they had to have, not knowing this is back in the 40s. It really astounds me. So I have used those sorts of images and those sorts of thoughts through my songwriting in this record, compared to my first record, Sa, which was a much more broader sort of personal journey of talking about my mental health and all those sorts of things. With Mojuda, it was is yeah, trying to pinpoint some of those stories and tell those stories. I have the song Huna Legio as well, which is like live for now. And it's about the story of kind of leaving a city, taking all of your most precious things with you and not knowing when you're going to go back, but just keep walking and keep taking care with your steps to live for the moment again in that process, not worrying too much about the destination, but trying to enjoy the journey as you go. So that's like it means a lot to me. All of my songwriting means a lot to me. And Mojuda, I think, is though still just one step in the progression of my career. There's a lot more to come.
Yeah, the way you put it, it does touch a string in my heart as well. Because I've heard how migration was for people who came earlier, like South Asian communities here. But even for me as an international student, like the minute you leave home, you never really feel like you belong anywhere. It's just like packing stuff and moving from one place and then another till one day you actually establish yourself. And I'd love to listen to Maujuda with this like insight that you put it through. And I'd love to get back to you with what I feel as well.
Please, I would love that.
And like you were saying earlier, one of the best ways to experience music, especially like yours, is to listen it live. What is different about performing your music live compared to listening to the recordings that you have done?
I think the live performance is really where you get to see the true artistry of someone.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I feel like having that shared experience in real time is very cool. It's
mm-hmm,
because when you're at a live perform on the recording, you can hear the recording, and then tomorrow you can hear the recording, and it's going to sound exactly the same, right? But if you come to my show today and you come to another show tomorrow, it's
mm-hmm,
not going to be exactly the same. The version of it that it is on that day
mm-hmm,
is only specific to that moment. And that is what I love so much about live music is that it's this experience that you can't recreate and you can't relive. You just have to be there and focused in that sense and in that whatever you get in terms of um, there's a lot to think about. And that's why the it for me as an artist, it's a joy to perform over and over again
mm-hmm,
because it's always different and it's and always unique.
mm-hmm. Especially from an audience point of view, audiences just focus on the lyrics, or maybe just the music, or maybe just focusing on what the artist is wearing or what's surrounding them. As the musician on stage, is there a particular moment in a live performance which you think audiences should definitely look out for or notice as well?
I think the communication between me and my musicians on stage
Mm-hmm,
is subtle, but it is beautiful. So if you look out for their sometimes, for example, if I like smile at my bass player, it's maybe because I've stuffed something up, like I've made a mistake or they've made a mistake. And so if audiences are really carefully watching, you can tell the actual connection and communication which is happening on the stage. And things like I do a lot of playing back and forth with my drummer, for example, and like I'll do something and then she'll do something, and those sorts of really fun moments are something to look out for.
mm-hmm. That's nice. What is one Indian song that you grew up listening and now that you look back at it, you wish you could have written?
Oh, that's a great question. I there's so many. Oh, okay. So I'm thinking about different things and I'm trying to think of I don't know. I grew up listening to a lot of Bollywood, like watching the Bollywood movies and stuff like that. Oh, actually, do you know what's a song that I love? That is a Jigjit song. And it's the one that I mean, I don't know if I wish I had written it because I probably don't even really understand it all that well, but it's the होठों से छू लो तुम
I've heard
मेरा
that. Yeah.
गीत अमर कर दो आकाश का सोनापन मेरे तन्हा मन में I don't even yeah that's a beautiful song I and that was one of my it's one of my dad's favorite songs so I'm going to choose that.
Same. I think I grew up with my mom and dad, like whenever they were like working around the house, they'd play like old compilations of Pankaj Udhas, Jagjit Singh, as well as Falguni Pathak for my mom. So I've
Okay.
grown up listening to these songs. While I don't know the names, I know the lyrics by heart.
Nice, beautiful.
Yeah. Your final stop is coming up at Riverside Paramount in August. What are you most excited about for that show?
So with that show, it's a special collaboration with my friends Emily Rose and
Mm,
Offrey. And so it's a joint performance in that we're all singing each other's songs. So sometimes I take the lead and sing a song, and they sing harmonies with me, and sometimes I'm singing harmonies for them. So it's a very equal kind of shared thing, and it's great because I feel like the different types of audiences that we will bring into that show, it's like I'm excited to show my audiences, my friends Emily Rose in the Wild and Offrey, and the sort of music that they play as well. And there's a really cool moment where that song Huna Legio I was talking about, and they are singing it with me. And there's the sargam, and there's also some konakol style vocalizations in it,
mm,
and they have learnt how to sing it, and they've done it really well. So it's really nice for me to have non-Indian singers
mm,
singing Indian music with me.
mm.
That is the yeah, the coolest thing about it.
That's fascinating. And I feel like that gives you every singer such more space to grow because they're experimenting with Indian music and you're experimenting with their style. Now,
Yes.
we're almost to the end. I think the Zoom call will be ending in like around 10 minutes. The
Mhm.
final question I'd like to ask you would be that there's so many young South Asians artists who are growing up in Australia today from mixed cultures, mixed ancestries, even people who are coming from outside. What advice would you give to someone who feels like they quite don't fit into one box? And with that, how they should grow up as a musician or in a creative field like yours.
I don't know if it's good advice or bad advice, but I would say just make your own box. If you don't fit into any others, just do your own thing. The world is so big, and with the internet and social media, you can find people that will relate to your music. But also, the thing that you need to focus on, like I was saying with the classical music, is your practice,
Hmm.
your artistic practice, because that is the seat of your music, and that is something no one can take for you. And be in it for the long game. You just keep going, you just keep doing things, creating things, putting things out, all those sorts of things. If you are passionate and it's something that you really want to do as a living, it takes a lot of the hustle, as in, like, you really have to be out involving yourself in the wider Australian music community.
Hmm.
But it can be done. I live a pretty simple life, but it's a really satisfying one in that I get to do what I love to do all the time. And for me, it is has eventually kind of come to a place where I feel very comfortable, and that I feel like that whole term of successful as well. It's like, what does success means? I feel successful. I feel like I'm doing it, and that's good. So hopefully you just, yeah, if there's a sound that you want to make and music you want to make, just do it. The tools are out there to do it.
Pavan, it has been so lovely chatting with you today. And before we do wind up the call, I'd like you to tell everyone where they can find you, listen to your music, and most importantly, catch you live. I know I want to see you live once if you're doing any shows in Adelaide.
Absolutely. My best, all the social media handles is at Parvyn Music, so Parvyn Music,
Mm-hmm.
and that's on Instagram and Facebook and everything. Also on my website, parvyn.com, I list all my shows, or on my link tree as well. I am performing on August 30th at Parramatta,
Mm-hmm.
with my friends Emily Rose and the Wild, like I'd mentioned. And I do actually have some Adelaide shows coming up. So I've got one that's in the Barossa Valley in September. I'm doing a festival with the Australian String Quartet.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's Western classical musicians, and they are collaborating with me and my husband Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And we have just announced a show at Nexus Arts in Adelaide for November. It's at the beginning of November, and also Melbourne Recital Centre in Melbourne as well will be like the week after. So there are shows in November with that. And that is again another beautiful project to be able to get Western classical musicians to be playing some Indian scales and things that sort of sharing of cultures which is happening here and which I'm a part of. I'm really excited by because it's not something that's been done before.
Lovely. I've actually seen a lot of performances with Australian String Quartet because it's very close to where I live by. So I'd
Great.
love to catch you when you're collabing with them next this year. And thank you so much for joining us today. And to everyone watching, if you want to experience Parvyn live, make sure you check out the upcoming show at Parramatta in August. And thank you for watching Desi Australia.